Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and I've got a great guest lined up for us today. I'm so excited about the interview we're about to conduct because this is a man I deeply respect. I watch him in action every Sunday. And Dr. David Cranford is everything you would want your pastor to be. He's wise, he's caring, he's humorous. He's just a wonderful man. He's married to a wonderful woman. And my wife and I are so excited that he is guiding our family on our spiritual journey. And so with no further ado, I'm going to bring out to you Dr. David Cranford of First Baptist Church of Ponchatoula. Pastor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Well, we're honored to have you. And why don't we begin by you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I was born not far from here in Slidell, and so I'm a native Louisianian. Came to Ponchatoula in 2008, so I've been here about 13 years. It's my privilege to pastor one of our great churches in our community, and really one of the great churches in our state. First Baptist Ponchatoula has always been one of the leading great Baptist churches in our state. And, I always kind of say it's a church that really doesn't need a pastor, but I'm really glad they don't know that because they might not recognize that they really don't need me. I'm glad they think they do.
Well, I'm not buying that, but that's modest of you. And I told you guys he was funny, right? Well, tell us, when did you arrive at First Baptist, and maybe tell us a little bit about the journey to get there.
Sure. I arrived in 2008. And I came from central Louisiana. The easiest way to tell you where I served is to call it Pineville, although it's actually Tioga. But you kind of have to be going to Tioga to get there. And I pastored in Tioga for 15 years, served that church for 15 years, and now this one 13 years. I'm really not a mover. I'm a state footer.
Does that mean that you subsisted on Lee's pies and ham sandwiches for a while? Isn't that general area?
It is that area, and it's close. And my wife and her family love Lee's, and we love Lee's.
Yeah,
and, absolutely. So,
well, you remind me of my dear friend Chris Broadwater up in Hammond. He's from up there. His dad was a Baptist preacher. Yeah, I think you and Chris graduated from the same seminary down there in New Orleans. Absolutely. But the pies are so good there. I remember I used to do summer camp in Natchitoches. I was a counselor for a leadership camp up there every summer at the university. And my mom and dad insisted that I stop at Lee's for pies on the way back. So pretty legendary grub.
If you're close, you have to stop.
Well, tell us, what did you learn up there that you brought back and are now putting to use at the First Baptist Church?
Well, it was my privilege to pastor Tioga First Baptist for 15 years. And just sort of really thought that I would retire there, and I was, minding my own business. I think that's when we get in trouble, when we're minding our own business, right? I was minding my own business and received some telephone calls from First Baptist Church of Ponchatoula, and of course from South Louisiana, so I knew where Ponchatoula was. And one thing led to another, and man, they grilled me. I can't tell you how many hours they grilled me before they brought me before the church, and the church agreed to call me as pastor, and I wound up here. And the two cultures have some similarities, but South Louisiana, and Central Louisiana is it's a little bit different. But I didn't suffer from culture shock moving to South Louisiana because, as I said, I'm from here. My family considers Slidell home, although I'm the only one of my family born in Louisiana. My roots, or as we say in South Louisiana, my roots go way back into central Mississippi. And an interesting story, my dad grew up as one of six, and his father was killed by a drunk driver pretty early in his life. My dad kind of started to work pretty young to help the family survive. My grandmother went back to work in a sanatorium, those hospitals for people that had tuberculosis. And my dad wound up joining the Navy, and he became a pilot in the Navy. and served in World War II.
Wow.
And then
Greatest
some,
generation.
yes,
What type of
absolutely.
aircraft did he pilot?
He flew torpedo bombers primarily, and
Mhm.
they fly right above stall speed, which is not a good thing for a pilot or for an aircraft. My dad crashed 3 times actually in his aircraft and walked away from every single crash.
Wow. That's a
But
God thing.
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, one of his crashes, he was training out of Keesler in South Mississippi on the in the Biloxi area, and he was flying a training aircraft, and the engines failed while he was flying, and he thought that he could make it to Lakefront Airport in New Orleans, and he almost made it, and he got to thinking that he probably should eject from his aircraft, but he was afraid to eject because he knew the aircraft would probably go into the city and crash and maybe kill some people, harm some people. So he thought he could make it to the runway, and his landing gear actually hit the wall right in front of the runway.
Oh my gosh! Whoa!
Kind of tipped over into Lake Pontchartrain. But anyway, I say all that to say this: after the war, I think like so many members of that greatest generation, my dad had the benefits of the GI Bill, and it made such a difference in his life and in the life of my family. So on the GI Bill, after the war, my dad was able to return to college because of the government loans that he got. He went back to Ole Miss, and he got his college degree in physics, and he became, since he was a pilot, he went to work for Boeing, was an aerospace engineer. And then back in the day, Boeing was really, really active in the space program. And my dad wound up working on the rocket engines for the Saturn and Apollo rockets. And he was stationed at Michoud in New Orleans East. And he also worked at the Mississippi Test Facility, now known as Stennis Space Center in Bay St. Louis. And so my dad kind of split the difference and wound up in Slidell. And with so many other families, I mean, hundreds of families wound up in Eastern St. Tammany Parish at that time because of the space program. And that's how we wound up in Slidell. And it became our
That's
home.
amazing. I mean, your father's story is so fantastic. I mean, it almost sounds like the prequel to Forrest Gump, right? I mean, it's all these major things from the war to the space race, and he's there with the front seat. That's amazing. You must have grown up with some great dinner time discussions and anecdotes around the house.
Absolutely. I guess to make matters more interesting, my parents had 5 children, and they were all boys, 5 boys. So you can imagine that life was rather exciting. And I'm the 5th.
Oh yeah, I'm one of 4 boys. I'm 2 out of 4, so I can relate.
Yeah.
Your mother has a special place in heaven with mine for sure.
You get it. People say, how did your mom? My mom was, short, 5'5", and my mom would say, people say, how'd your mom control all of you crazy boys, you 5 boys? I say, listen, every single one of us was afraid of her because she could absolutely control us and handle us. And she
I'll give you a quick story to tell you how similar it was in my house. So as I mentioned, I'm second of 4. And my brother Bree and I are the closest in age. We're 18 months apart. So long story short, we got the roughhousing inside one day, and Dad was home. Mom was not yet home from work at the time. She was working for First Guaranty Bank. And long story short, Bree and I, we were high schoolers. We started going at it, and it ends up with me throwing him onto the kitchen table and the legs of our Cypress kitchen table going out. My dad runs in there. What happened? And rather than being the, authority figure there, getting onto us, he knows Mom's about to get off work. This is her precious Cypress table. What are we going to do? So we all conspire and prop up the table, and it would stand up, but just a featherweight would have knocked it over. And Mom gets home, puts her purse down on the table from work. Wow, it goes out. We all run in there. Mom, what did you do?
You broke the table.
Yeah. We broke the table. She broke the table, but we didn't last long. My dad broke and told the real story, and we all got in trouble. But I know what it's like for 4 boys, and bear in mind, my dad was sheriff at the time, so he wears a gun to work and a badge, and he was still scared of this, short Cajun woman. So I can relate to where you're coming from. That's funny.
Absolutely, and being the baby, we'll just say I probably was not a planned pregnancy. My oldest brother was 18 when I was born. The nearest brother to me was 11 years older than me, and my mother was 44. God bless her when she had me. And but I've made peace with all that. And I've gotten over. I don't have any very lasting scars from that. But
Well,
I had a lot of
I hope your
losses.
brothers were kinder to you than we were to my brother Louis, who was similarly situated. Mom and Dad called him their unexpected little treasure, who came 6 years after Bree. We all called him the mistake on the lake, and we were unkind in our youth. But he's certainly the favorite. He's gotten back at us. So tell me about your brothers. Have they scattered in different directions? Do they stay in Southeast Louisiana?
We have a couple. They're all retired now, and
Okay.
I'm the only one. I tell them as often as I talk to them, I'm the only one working, putting into the Social Security system so they can go out to their mailbox every month and pick up their check. I guess one of us has to work, but I have two that are in Slidell. One's retired from the Slidell Police Department. Another was a retired oceanographic engineer, and then my oldest brother lives in the Dallas area. He's a retired software engineer. He built flight simulators. And
Wow.
They were not nice to me as I grew up. I had about 6 bosses, and they say I was the favorite, like you said, of your little brother. But it's not easy being the youngest. It's not easy having all those bosses.
I bet.
And being the favorite. It's not easy.
Right.
So,
what did you learn as the baby? Tell me some lessons that come from being the run of the litter or the caboose, if you will.
Well, there are a lot of things that I learned that I won't be sharing online. Let's just say that I learned a lot of things quite early that I probably should have learned a lot later in life. But I don't know. I think I probably learned how to be confident with 4 older brothers, and I probably learned how to be outgoing. I think by nature my personality is probably a little bit shy and probably a little bit of an introvert, but because I was the baby and grew up around people, just people everywhere, I think that helped me to kind of be a little bit outgoing, even though I think by nature I am an introvert. So I followed in their footsteps through school, and I would go to class every year, first day of school, and half the teachers at Slidell High School would say, "Oh, are you Clay's brother? Are you Mark's brother? Are you Don's brother?" I would always try to say, "No, I don't know who you're talking about."
Right.
Because I knew what the teacher was doing. Like, okay, here's another one.
Yeah.
I know what this is going to be like. Anyway, they're all retired. We did one of my brothers passed. Let's see, about 2002. He had melanoma and died pretty young. But the 4 of us are still hanging in there. During COVID, we've had. In fact, tonight we will have a conference call. We have a weekly Thursday night conference call.
Oh, that's
we all
cool.
get together, and we settle the problems of the world and take care of any issues that need to be taken care of in that conference call, for sure. So.
Well, one thing I'm going to be eager to hear about is, you coming from a family of all boys may or may not have shared this fear I always had as an eventual parent, which is, what the heck am I going to do if I have a daughter, because I know nothing about women? I escaped that with 2 boys, but I know you have a couple boys, but also a daughter. So I'll be interested to hear if you're ready for that challenge when we get to that. But before I do, let's ask about how we got there to parenthood. Tell us about Miss Kathy and how you met, and all about that love story.
Sure. So after I graduated from high school, Slidell High, I knew that I was called to ministry at that point, and so I went to LSU, but then I went to UNO. I graduated from UNO with my undergraduate degree there on the lakefront. Then went around the corner to New Orleans Seminary and got my Master's of Divinity degree and began working on my doctorate. And about that time, I decided that I probably needed a full-time ministry position. And so it was about that time that I was called to Tioga First Baptist in Pineville. I originally was the minister of youth and education there. I was a youth minister back in the day. Still a youth minister, really. I just deal with older kids. I went to Central Louisiana and was single, which back in the day, that was not extremely common to have single Baptist ministers, but I was.
Right.
I became pastor of the church. Kathy actually was a member of Tioga First Baptist, but when I got there, she right before I got there, she left to go to Baton Rouge to work on her master's degree in education at LSU. So as I was coming in the front door, she was going out the back door.
So you guys passed like ships in the night, right? On I-12, I-10.
I will say that, there were some very observant ladies in that church, and they could kind of do the math in their head, and they knew that we probably needed to meet. Kathy was the church pianist at Tioga First Baptist. So yes, I'm a little bit of a cliche. I'm a pastor who married the church pianist, but she was not the church pianist when I got there or when we married. And so we eventually met. I remember where we met. We met in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and her mom was with us, and we met and began dating, and the rest is history. We had a rather long engagement, but the rest is history. I think I was 32 when I got married, and and served, continued serving at Tioga, and then when I was 36, we had our first child, who was a girl, and I was a little bit nervous about that. I have to admit, because I had my mom and then Kathy.
Right.
There's just not a whole lot of girls in the house.
Yeah.
But Caroline's been a dream child, and she just graduated this year. I can't believe
right. Yeah.
that I have a kid who's going into college. So we have an.
Do I remember right? Is she going to LSU? I remember when she graduated. What's her plan?
She's going to Southeastern.
Southeastern. What's she going to study? I remember on graduate day they announced it, but I've clearly mixed it up.
She's studying nursing. She's going.
Neat.
At Southeastern, and so we're excited about that. She's going to stay at home, and we're excited about that.
So your family's just serving in every direction. You chose the ministry early. You were called early in your life, and your wife's in education, and here's your daughter going into nursing. You guys are helping people. That's really neat.
It's awesome, and we have a 18-year-old, 16-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And my wife said teaches at Martha Vineyard Elementary, and has been there, and is currently our children's minister at the church.
And I want to ask about that, because I mentioned off air before we started the show how excited my boys are to be part of her flock. But while we're on the topic of Caroline, your firstborn, I want to publish this quote here that Miss Vicki Graham Allen has put up there, and she says, "Caroline is amazing, and you did great." So whatever jitters you may have had, and clearly you knew what you were doing, and Miss Kathy knew what you were doing. You've raised a wonderful daughter. Folks, for those of you watching, while we have a comment up here, I'd just like to mention, if you're watching live and you'd like to post a comment, perhaps you have a question for Dr. Cranford, or if you just want to say something nice, as Miss Vicky's done here, feel free to post. I will do my best to put it up on the screen and get your comment here where Dr. Cranford can see it in real time or something close to that. So we're talking to Miss Kathy, and you mentioned that she is the youth minister, and we've been watching you with the COVID. And I'll briefly give you the history there. This all goes down, and the whole world goes online. And we had been attending my wife's childhood church out in the country, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, outside of Independence. And one week they had a tech glitch with the connection, so we decided to watch you instead. And your sermon was amazing, and we just got hooked. We kept coming back, and eventually Brandy and the kids all joined the church. And we show up, and these boys were very nervous. My kids are 5 and 3, and my 5-year-old was particularly anxious about starting a new Sunday school class and joining a new youth program. And I'm going to tell you, it was like Miss Kathy knew, how to handle that from day one. My boy came out of there excited, couldn't wait till next week. And as I mentioned to you, I figured you guys had a wonderful youth event at your home a few weeks ago and fed everybody and did a barbecue and had all these games. And I don't think they knew they were at Dr. Cranford's house. They just knew they were at Miss Kathy's house, and it was a really big deal. And she does great with that. So tell us a little bit about her career in education, her ministry, and kind of what she does.
Well, she does have a ministry, and I've always said that, and many church members would agree with me here. People tolerate me to get close to Kathy, and hey, listen, I chose her, so I'm okay with that. And, and I appreciate the comments about Caroline, and Kathy has, all credit goes to Kathy. Kathy's a gifted educator. She graduated from Louisiana College in education and taught some in Central Louisiana, then headed to LSU for her master's degree in education, specialist degree in education, and she teaches elementary education. And when we had kids, she went home and she sat out for 10 years. And then once our youngest was kind of up in school himself, she went back to Midway.
And is that Peter? Is Peter the youngest?
Peter is the youngest.
Okay, so it's Caroline, John, and then Peter. And you mentioned the age range earlier. Okay.
Right. Yeah, 18, 16, 14. So we're
little
busy.
Spread.
We're busy. Yeah.
I can relate to that. Brandy and I only have two, but she told me on second or third date she wanted two kids 2 years apart. And our boys are 2 years and 5 days apart. So it sounds like you and I we're kindred spirits. We both outkicked our coverage and married women in education that know what they're doing.
Absolutely. We had the two. We had Caroline and John, and I told the two kids that we could either have another baby or we could have a dog. And so we have Peter, and now of course they want a dog. But I told them that's not the deal. You could have a brother,
no take backs,
or you could have a dog, but not both. And Kathy went back to work after Peter was in school. She worked at Midway up the road and taught music there on a contract basis, part time. And then she was able to get into Martha Vineyard. She teaches 5th grade math at Martha Vineyard and has been there quite some time and enjoys it.
Yeah.
And, we love being a part of our community, not only in serving in the church, but being a part of our community through the schools. And we just love the opportunities that she has to serve there. And,
yeah, Martha Vineyard's a great school. It's got a special place in my heart. Our mutual friend, Danny Williams, got me into public service there, tutoring. He started a tutoring program through the Key Club when I was a member, and we had a blast with that. But going back even farther, you mentioned your father was a World War II hero. And sadly, my grandfather died when my dad was 16, so I never got to meet his father. But our next door neighbor, who was a World War II veteran, a Navy veteran, like your dad, was Winks Vineyard, who was the principal out there at Vineyard, was a great man. But we talked off air. Mr. Reggie Peavy worked out there. There have been so many Titans. I think of Miss Sandra Johnson, Diane Milton. I mean, you name it. There have been just some really heavy hitting educators pass through there, and it's a wonderful school. It's cool to hear that your wife is carrying that torch now.
It's awesome. She loves her time there and her service there. And I think most of her students like her too. Now, it's 5th grade math, and math kind of gets real in 5th grade,
right?
And school kind of gets real in 5th grade, and so they run a pretty tight ship. But it's a great blessing for her to be able to serve there and work there, and she's enjoyed filling in as our children's minister, serving as our children's minister. It's a little bit too much on her, I think. But
I bet. She's great. I'm going to share a comment here, if you don't mind. Kelly Brandon, was my old high school classmate and dear friend. She says that Miss Kathy is awesome with the kids. Liam loves her, and every Sunday wanted to go see her. So she's doing great work. Another member of your church is commenting here. Roxanne Ryder Larkin says that her pastor and Kathy are the kindest and most compassionate people. She loves you, and she says you're a great preacher.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you put her up to that, but that's
say
about as good as it
exactly
gets.
those things.
That's what I figured. No, Roxanne, thank you for tuning in. Of course, you're dead on right. These are wonderful folks. And so we're talking about family here. Let's talk. Oh, you know, we can't leave your boys out of this. Let's talk about John and Peter. And they're a bit younger. They're not to the graduate level yet, but what are they into? I know they're into sports. I know we share some friends that you see on the ballpark a lot. So tell us a little bit about them and what they're into.
Sure, absolutely. John is 16. He'll be a junior at Ponchatoula High School. And all of our kids have just really thrived in our Tangipahoa Parish school system. They've really thrived in our schools, and he's doing that as well. And he is learning to drive, and all that kind of exactly all that kind of goes along with that. And he plays soccer and has done so for quite a number of years, and plays on the Ponchatoula High School team. And he's decided over the summer that he's gonna go out for the Ponchatoula High School tennis team. Although I told him, I said, John, you know, you don't know anything about tennis, and I know even less. And he said, hit it over the net. So I guess that's step number one. Right, and he's also gainfully employed, or so I hear.
Cool. Where's he working?
Well, he's working at Snow Bros Snowball Stand in Hammond. One of his friends works there, and he's kind of brought him into the biz world. And I told the guys there, I said, if you guys get a picture of John working, please send it to me, because I've never really seen him do a whole lot of work. And you know, again, just a great blessing.
That first job is such a trip. And I'm going to tell you, it can mold you. I learned so much at my first job. I worked 4 years of high school at Hi-Ho. And of course, I'm old, gray in the beard, which means Hi-Ho was across the street from where it is now. But, you know, with the link to John here, we had a snowball stand in the parking lot of the Hi-Ho. So, you know, that was a big part of the action. But, you know, you can learn so much in those first few jobs, you know, and I take customer client service lessons I learned at Hi-Ho, and we use them here in my law firm. So hopefully they'll teach him some good things and some solid business principles, and, you know, how to treat his customers with respect and ethics, and hopefully that'll work well.
I remember my jobs as I was going through high school and
tell us about them. What was your first one?
My first job, I worked at TG&Y. That was my first job, and I got that job when I was 16. And then I went from TG&Y. You know, when I grew up in Slidell, believe it or not, we came to Hammond to shop, because I mean, Slidell was just a bump.
Well, it was the opposite when I came up, because y'all had the big mall and you had Academy way before we did. That's interesting.
Right. But when I was a kid, Slidell was just a bump in the road, and we came to Hammond Square to shop. But I started working at TG&Y, and then when North Shore Square Mall opened, I would have been in college, going into college, and I got a job at the Sears store there in North Shore Square, and worked there for about 5 years. And I agree with you, Parker. I say sometimes I think everybody ought to work at least just a little bit for a season with the public. You learn so much about working with the public and how to deal with people. And I think Sears Roebuck and Company, and I worked for them back in the day when they really were Sears Roebuck and Company, but I think Sears Roebuck and Company taught me more about working with people than my seminary training did, you know, just in how to deal with people and how to speak to people and work with people. And so those are great experiences.
For sure.
Jobs. You're right. Absolutely.
And I think back, there was a woman that I worked with named Celeste Alexander. And if you Google this, I know this has been circled around Facebook a few times the last few years, but she worked at the Hammond Hi-Ho. She went to work there as a cook when she was 13. And when I got there, it was roughly 50 years later. She was in her 60s. And she had the most amazing people skills ever. But she taught me so much, like you said, about dealing with the public, you know, and everybody's walking in there fighting their own battles, dealing with their own day. But we could be a bright spot in that day by getting the coldest Barks root beer we could find and, serve us with a smile. And it meant something. And I mean, yeah, we were just there to, in my day, make $4 an hour,
Right.
but I carry those lessons through to now, as you clearly do, and whether you're at the pulpit or in a law office or wherever life takes you, those early, public facing customer service lessons are important. My wife did the same. She came up in retail at Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
And I know that's helped her a lot in her career as an education facing social worker. Right. So, I mean, really, Miss Vicki Graham says everyone loves Celeste. Miss Vicki, thanks for remembering Miss Celeste. She was a real sweetheart. My dad always, he and mom always called her my dad's other Celeste. My mom's name's Celeste. They loved her. Your friends, Paul Riggs says that they're watching.
Awesome.
Mr. Paul's brilliant son with the same name was my schoolmate at Ponchatoula High. He's a CPA now, a very talented fellow, and that's just a great family. Mr. Paul, thank you for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us about. I'm sorry, Pastor.
Paul Riggs was Paul Riggs Sr. now, not Junior. Paul Riggs Sr. was on the search committee that brought me to Ponchatoula, as was Danny Williams.
Well, tell us about because you're talking about two local legends right there. Who else was on the committee?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember who else was on the committee. Brad McLaughlin, I believe. Henry Hudson was on that committee. Who else was on that? I've slept a few times since then. Kevin Billiot, who Kevin's moved away from us, but Kevin was on that team. And of course, Annette Gordon was on that team.
I was about to ask about Miss Annette. If you got past her, the ultimate gatekeeper of Ponchatoula's First Baptist Church.
So many funny stories about that process. And if you're not Baptist, Baptists sort of call their pastors the same way that most people look for a job. They sort of advertise, "Hey, pastor of this church is open," and resumes are submitted. And so they began interviewing me, and the first thing that happened to me was I got a questionnaire that by the time I answered the questionnaire in writing, I'm not kidding, it was like 12 pages long. It was like a dissertation that I sent to them with all these answers, and I thought, well,
I bet Mr. Danny put that together.
And then I had like this 2 or 3 hour interview that they grilled me on just questions out of left field and this and that.
Right.
Like I'm on my feet because I don't want to say anything wrong, And so then they invited us to come down. Interesting story there. And so we came down, and I kind of thought that the interview process was over. I thought, like, okay, this is going to be like their show and tell. They're going to show me the church, and hey, this is our church and this is our community. Of course, I was familiar with the community, at least to some degree. But I came down, and there was another 4-hour grilling in the pastor's office that's now my office at the church. So
the surprise Inquisition, that sounds more like a Catholic thing, the Spanish Inquisition.
It was. I don't think there was really. Miss Annette Gordon told me later. She said, "I called 47 people and asked them about you," and I said, "Miss Annette, I don't even know 47 people." She said, 47 people all said something good about you. I said, well, you just didn't talk to the right people. And most of the 47 were in central Louisiana trying to get me, out of there.
Right. It's like when a governor runs for president and they don't want that guy in their state anymore. They say, "Oh yeah, vote for him."
That's exactly it. And we were, as I said, I'm not a mover. I've only served 2 churches in a full-time capacity, and we were nervous about moving. Our kids were, if I remember right, about 5, 3, and 1.
Wow.
And we were.
And how did Miss Kathy feel about leaving her home area too? Because you mentioned she's from there.
We were nervous. We were anxious about it. And her family's there, and the kids' grandparents are there, and cousins, and all that. So we were nervous about it. An interesting story there. Of course, we were praying about this, and we were most concerned about our kids, obviously. And when we got back home, it was a couple of weeks later after we got back to central Louisiana, and the kids said, our 5, 3, and 1-year-olds said, "That church we went to the other day, we want to go back to that church. Let's go back to
Wow.
that church.
That's
And
cool.
so we kind of heard that as the voice of
Yeah.
God, right?
Right.
This is the Lord telling us everything's going to be okay with your kids. And
That's
so,
cool.
so we came, and Peter, that's the youngest. I didn't say anything about Peter. I got to talk about Peter.
Yeah. Let's not forget Peter. Your
Peter,
rock.
I think more people know Peter than know me. And Peter was in diapers when we got here. And
Wow.
but Peter is our fisherman. That is what Peter does. He is the resident fisherman of the family, and he loves to fish. Loves all things fishing, all locations fishing, all species of fish, all fishing rods, all fishing reels. Our garage is full of all of this stuff. And it's all I can do to keep him from buying a boat.
Well, of course that's a God thing then, because man, couldn't be in a better spot to hit any fresh or salt water you want to hit from here.
That's right.
That's cool. Well, you make a move like that. You talk about this gauntlet you got through. What were the things that surprised you about living in Ponchatoula and serving at First Baptist Church here? Because, like you said, you knew the community a bit. You're from Slidell. But I'm sure some things surprised you. Do you remember any?
Yeah, absolutely. We immediately, fell in love with this community. And I think because Ponchatoula reminds me so much of the Slidell that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
It has very much that feel to it. And now, our community is growing like Slidell did. And,
right.
I see some of those same challenges coming down the road. We're going to have parking challenges, and we're going to have traffic challenges, and we're going to have infrastructure challenges.
Sprawl.
Absolutely. And we have those issues at the church. We have space problems, and we need more space. And so that was really a blessed surprise to discover that Ponchatoula is so much like the Slidell that I grew up in. It was really a surprise to find the church like it is. It's such a loving family and such a great church. As I said, a church that really could pastor itself. Doesn't really need me there a whole lot. It's been a blessing the entire 13 years that I've been here. So those were some really good surprises. When we moved here, it was 2008, so it's still kind of in the post-Katrina crunch, right? It was hard for us. We really wanted to live in Ponchatoula. We wanted to live in the city limits. And literally, when we moved here, there was nowhere to live.
Well, I was about to say that's hard to do. There's so few options here in town. My wife and I saw that we wanted the even more difficult challenge of building a home in the city limits, and there's almost no undeveloped land here, right? So it's tough to get in this little footprint of the city limits. I was a little slow in pulling this up because I didn't want to interrupt your story, but Miss Annette has chimed in and she says she's watching, so be careful.
I'm on my best behavior.
Miss Annette, I can't tell you how much my mama loves you. She just loves your long conversations at physical therapy or wherever she sees you. And of course, Brandy and I look forward to seeing you at Danny's every Christmas Eve. You're a wonderful woman. Thank you for tuning in. I promise you we'll mind our P's and Q's here. Well, so we talk about surprises getting here to Ponchatoula, and you mentioned, your son's into fishing. Are you an outdoorsman yourself? Did you teach him all these fishing spots, or is that something he's picked up through friends?
He's probably learned more from friends than he has from me. I might have helped him kind of get started. Of course, growing up in Slidell, my family always had some sort of camp. And please understand me when I say camp. What I really mean is shack. My family always had some kind of shack out on Lake Pontchartrain. We had a shack out on Highway 11 as I grew up as a child, and then one of my brothers lived out on the water. Car Drive, Highway 11, Lake Pontchartrain area out there, out where Eden Isles is, if you're unfamiliar with that area. And so we always had a place to go and fish. And so, I grew up fishing, grew up crabbing and enjoying those kinds of things. And my brother that passed, Peter looks like my brother that passed. I don't believe in reincarnation. Please don't get me wrong. But I think that Peter shares some characteristics with my brother that passed. And I don't really know what I did to deserve my nearest brother. I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but I've got him. And he knows all things. He knows all things fishing. And his knowledge has surpassed my knowledge at this point.
Well, that's because, as Mary Beth Crevetto points out here, that Dr. Cranford, you are a fisher of men. So, you you have focused on the more important fishing here. But that's neat to hear that your son is picking up the torch that your brother left off. That's a really cool story. Well, you've been here a while now, and you made it a home, and your family is well ingrained in the community, your children, your wife, etc. What is it that you love about living in Ponchatoula? When people ask you about why you stayed, because you're a very well-educated man, you're a great preacher. I'm sure churches all over the world would love to hire you. You've chosen to stay here. Give us a little bit of why.
Well, I love the community. I love South Louisiana culture. I grew up in it, obviously. I love our family focus in our community. I don't like to move. I mean, I don't know anybody that really enjoys the experience of moving, but I think there are people who enjoy going to greener pastures, or what they think are greener pastures. They enjoy that experience of starting over, but I really like to just plant and put down roots and stay. And so I've done that, and have loved every minute of it. I think it's important for kids, when it's possible, I think it's important for them to sort of have familiar surroundings as they grow up, and to be as planted as they can. I think it brings a certain stability to their lives. And have no plans of leaving here. We enjoy the community, have so many friends now here, very close friends now here, and we've just enjoyed our time of service at the church, and got a lot of things left I want to do at the church.
Well, tell us about that. Tell us about the things you'd like to do. What's on the tap there at First Baptist?
Well, we are even now, Lord help us, we're even now looking at the possibility of construction, and I don't want to start that process right now, because I think 2x4s are about $87 or something like that right now. So I don't want to do that right now, but we do need more space at First Baptist, and so we're looking toward the future to building a new preschool, nursery, children's area, student area, and we're putting those plans together right now. I don't think First Baptist Ponchatoula has ever had enough space, and so we're going to help in that process. We've done some minor projects since I've been here, but this will be the most major project that we're looking at in the future, and it's exciting. And also, a little bit of anxiety comes along with it.
I bet.
We've added some parking, and that's been a great blessing to our church. We've done some improvements on Pine Street, sort of kind of made everything look like a campus and unified everything as much as we can, and done some of those projects. Got a lot of things going on, and looking forward.
Well, the church seems to have a lot of vision toward the future in acquiring all that property around its old campus, and clearing it out so that you have a little bit of room to grow. Because as I recall from childhood, there were a number of other homes maybe on that block that were kept things pretty tight there for a while.
That's right. We've been able to acquire that entire city block, and now we've got a little piece across the street as well. And that's been a great blessing. I really think if the church had not been able to, sort of expand the footprint in the downtown area, and we love being downtown, because one of the things that I've tried to do in my tenure here, not too long after I got here, we kind of did some visionary thinking and planning with our congregation, and talking about, what are some things that you would like for the church to do, and some things that you would like for the church to be a little bit better at. And overwhelmingly, the number one response to that was our church members wanted our church to be more involved in the community. And so we've been able to focus on that. And
tell us about that. Tell us about
Yeah.
the things y'all do in the community.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest areas where we've been able to hopefully make a difference is in our schools. When you start talking about community involvement as a church, you go straight after those kids, because I mean, what's most important to all of us, that is our children, and we want our children to grow up, and we want them to know the Lord, and we want them to grow up and to become productive adults. And so community involvement to me translates almost directly into involvement with children and students. And so we've been able to get involved with our schools, and most recently we've had some in our schools come to us and say, hey, we've got kids that are dependent on schools for most of the calories that they eat, most of the food that they get.
Right.
Maybe they don't have all of the resources that they need at home, and parents, for whatever reason, are not able to supply all of the meals that the children need. And so a lot of these kids eat their meals at school, and that creates a problem on the weekend, because obviously they're not at school on the weekend. And so we've been able to provide some, we call it a backpack ministry, but it's really a bag ministry. We've been able to provide some food for schools that they can give to some kids to take home on the weekend and help with some of those needs. And so that's just
so important. Yeah. Well, and while we're on the topic of examples, I want to say thank you to you and your church, and provide a small example of how you're helping kids. So I've got a little summer Bikes for Kids program that's been going on for a while, and this year we're going to give away 25 bikes. And I've been funding it through my law firm for years, and I haven't gone anywhere to ask for money. But a few years ago, I got a call from one of your associate ministers, Josh Dixon, who says, hey, love this program. The church would like to help. And he showed up here at my law office with a check, and you guys bought a couple bikes for kids without me ever asking. I don't think I'd ever stepped in the church. Of course, I've been to First Baptist before with friends, but I probably had not been on the campus for a decade. Right. Certainly didn't attend and worship there as I do now. But I mean, so my point here is, you guys get proactive. When you see an opportunity to help kids, large or small, you're doing it. And I really appreciated that. And I can tell you, we took that money and put it to good use. And there were a couple of little kids who had a great summer, and I hope they're still pedaling around right now on those bikes. But I want to say thanks, because I know that's one of many, many things that you and your team do. And why don't we use that as an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about the other members of your team? Because I know you're a great pastor, a great leader, but it's not a one-man show. Who else helps you lead the church and serves in critical roles?
So we have, I'll talk about our full-time guys. Chip Vickers is our worship pastor, and Chip was there when I got there. He's the one full-time staff member that was there when I got there, or at least the one full-time staff member that was there when I got there that's still there. And Chip is still there. And he does a great job with our worship, does all of the work with our Christmas Spectacular, which people in the community are familiar with. It's amazing. That.
Yeah.
And Chip handles all of that. The only problem that we have with Chip, and it's kind of an ongoing concern, and we really haven't been able to we really haven't been able to shake him loose from this. He does have a problem. He is an Alabama Crimson Tide fan.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. And we tried our best to pray it out of him. We tried to beat it out of him. We tried all kinds of things. But anyway, he does a great job for us. And we just have kind of learned to live with the Alabama thing. Then Josh Dixon is our minister of discipleship. You've talked about Josh. And Josh, people say, well, what does the minister of discipleship do? And bless his heart, he pretty much does anything I don't want to do. and so he does our educational ministry, our Sunday school, our discipleship ministry, and he does a whole lot of administration.
Such a great guy.
He is. And taking care of our facilities and our buildings. We have 5 main buildings. Our oldest building was built in the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
And then we have one built in the 60s, and then one built in the 70s, one built, and I think two built in the 80s. So there's constant maintenance on those things. And Josh handles not only our discipleship ministry and our educational ministry, does a lot with missions and also a lot of administration, facilities, maintenance. And then and Josh, by the way, also has a little bit of a sickness. He's a Tennessee Volunteer fan, and that's a little bit of an issue. And it's going to be a big issue this weekend. I didn't even know Tennessee had a
Can you
baseball
put
team.
him on some kind of sabbatical? I mean,
Well, I mean, I didn't even know Tennessee had a baseball team, but apparently they do. Then Robert Parkin is our minister to students. Robert ministers to our seventh graders to 12th graders.
Okay.
And he handles that and has been with us for a long time. I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. And Robert is an Ole Miss fan, so I'm kind of okay with that.
Oh my gosh!
I know it. I'm kind of.
I wish I'd have known all this before my wife joined the church, man. I tell you what.
Well, we don't. All we advertise is that I'm an LSU fan. That's really all we advertise. And a Southeastern fan, and a UNO fan. And,
right.
So Robert. My dad went to Ole Miss, so I'm a little bit okay with it. Robert does a great job with our student ministry, and this is his busy time of the year, no doubt. And so there's summer camp, and then
so you've got VBS, youth camp, and children's camp in some order coming up here. So he's got a hand in all that. That's got to be busy.
He is. He's busy, and then we also have a full-time children's minister. And that position is currently open. The children's minister sort of handles birth to 6th grade, and so that position is currently open. We have some wonderful ministerial assistants and ministry assistants in our office, and we had one that we just lost one of our full-time ministry assistants. She had a grandbaby and thinks that gives her reason to leave us. And she was there when I got there. We have another ministry assistant, Michelle Holder, and that was Celeste Donnell that I was talking about a moment ago. And those two ministry assistants do what I have seen other churches require 4 ministry assistants to do.
Wow.
And so they just, people used to ask, well, who do you work for? I work for Celeste Donnell. That's who I work for. I work for Michelle Holder, and they really do an incredible job. We have part-timers who work with us as well. We have a great staff of people and a great church. And you know how generous the people are in Ponchatoula. We have a generous community. And, I'm thinking right now about work that we're doing in India right now with other churches in our community, cooperating with St. Joseph and working together in India, providing some educational opportunities for children in India, and just a great church and a great community, and I look forward to the believers in our community coming together more and working together more in our community.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think I'm Catholic, my wife's Baptist, and historically those two groups haven't always played that well together, right? And years back, and it's probably no coincidence that this church is in between yours and mine. I attended a class at the Methodist Church. I think it was called Christianity's Family Tree. And they had this wonderful little book with a chapter on all the major denominations. And they all have so much to offer, right? And we have so much more in common than what divides us. Absolutely. And it's good to see, you and other pastors coming together to do that. And I got to say, y'all, I've only been there a brief time, a brief window in the Ponchatoula First Baptist Church history. But I have really enjoyed it, and you do great work. My boys right now, as I mentioned, Vacation Bible School is going on, and my 2 sons come back every day, so excited about what they learn. They can't wait to tell me at night when we read the Bible about the Bible story they learned during the day and all the fun they had. And you're doing a great job. You mentioned earlier, it's starting with the children, whether in the school or, in the pew. It's just so important. So thank you for doing that.
Well,
go ahead, please.
Vacation Bible School is always a blessing, and we're just thrilled that we're able to do it this year. We did a form of Vacation Bible School last year, but it wasn't our normal Vacation Bible School. And I think my wife is the Vacation Bible School director, as the children's minister this year. And I think she told me today that we have about 80 volunteers.
Wow.
Working. And
yeah.
And that's incredible, to even be able to get 80 volunteers, but to have them working together around the common goal. And it's been an incredible week, and we have one more day tomorrow, and we're looking forward to
And
that.
then I hope Miss Kathy sleeps for a week or a month or whatever it takes, because I can't imagine how tired she is.
Camp next week. So,
oh God, poor baby. Well, my wife comes home whipped. She's leading one of the small groups of preschoolers, and she comes home whipped. And of course, she doesn't have a fraction of the work to do that Miss Kathy has. So that's she's doing God's work. Well, tell us, we're almost at the end here, and I promised I'd get you out of here in an hour. Tell us about the lessons you've learned as a pastor, as a husband, as a father. Pick any of them or all, but things that you've learned along the way that you'd like to share with our viewers that you think could help them in their lives.
Sure. Well, I think first I would say that the most important aspect of being a pastor, and I would say the most important aspect of being a father, the most important aspect of being a lawyer, whatever it is God has called you to do, the most important aspect of life is your personal relationship with the Lord.
Amen.
And, God is not visible to us in tangible terms right now, and He will be. He will be in the kingdom. But right now, it's easy to kind of let that slide down the list because of the pressures of the day, right? I mean, we've talked about work, and we've talked about family and children, and I mean, all those things require so much attention. And there's there's just the pressure of the immediate emergency, whatever today's emergency is. There's the pressure of the immediate, and there's the everyday stresses and strains of being an employee and being a husband or a wife and being a father. And so it's easy for our personal walk with the Lord to sort of fall down to the bottom of the list. But I love that verse that says, seek first His kingdom, and then all these other things will be added unto you. And sometimes we think, I don't have time to spend some time in prayer today. I don't have time to spend some time in quiet time. I don't have time to read my Bible or my devotional guide today because I got all this other stuff pressing in on me. Well, here's the lesson, I think, from that verse. When we are that stressed and that busy, we don't have time not to pray. We don't have time not to spend with the Lord, because that 10, 15 minutes that we spend in doing that is going to add all these other things to us. The best thing we can do as fathers, the best thing we can do as employees, the best thing we can do as husbands is to make sure that we're walking with the Lord correctly. And I've learned that. I mean, I know that, right? Because I went to seminary for forever.
Right.
But I have to tell you, I've learned that by experience as well. Yeah. Because just because I'm a pastor doesn't mean I'm not susceptible to sort of pushing that concern a little bit further down the list than it should be. And historically, we've kind of called that the daily office. The daily office is that idea of a daily quiet time, spending time alone with the Lord. And that daily office time is the most important time that we spend. And I think as I get older, and that's not really a good word. As I get more experienced and mature, how about that?
Right. Well, South Louisiana, better seasoned,
There you go, seasoned. I think that I recognize more and more the importance of grace and the importance of forgiveness, and not only me receiving that grace, but hey, showing a little bit more grace to others. Showing a little bit more forgiveness to others. We kind of learn as we are more seasoned that there's a lot of small things that we turn into big things. And we probably should let some of those things go and be a little bit more filled with love and grace and mercy, particularly in the smaller things. And my kids will be shocked to hear me say that.
Well, there's so much wisdom there, and you're just dead on there. We got to put first things first, right? And we can't let the urgent issues of the day get in the way of the important one, which you hit the nail on the head. It's our relationship with God. So
Right.
thank you for helping us to learn that, to understand that. And I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, sure, you learned that in divinity school, and sure, you went on and got your doctorate and studied more, but you learned it as a man. You're going to learn it again this year. I mean, we have to continue to go back and learn that lesson time and time again, right? Because human nature is to get caught up in the other stuff.
Absolutely.
We got a great comment here from Paul Riggs. He says, Dr. Cranford, he loved hearing about your family, and it's great being in church after last year at home. So amen.
Yes.
I am so glad that God waited until 2020 to have this pandemic, when we all had FaceTime and Facebook and all these ways to continue to worship. It would have been a lot tougher had it been in the 80s or something.
Right.
But man, it was a poor substitute for being in the aisle in fellowship with your friends and family.
Absolutely. Preaching to an empty room, which I did for about 6 weeks.
Right.
And it's a Baptist church, so I mean, some people are asleep. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Some people are asleep,
funny.
but preaching to an empty room is absolutely no fun. And
so well, and your style too, because you're a humorous guy and you bring an energy, and it would be like being a comic of sorts. If you can't read the room, it's kind of hard to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Miss Annette Gordon here, before we close up, she's says that her job for many years was working with pastors and staff, and she says that you're one of the best. And
now
Miss Annette, it takes one to know one, so that's high praise
from me. I don't know what she wants, but I'm sure I'll hear it.
Well, Dr. Cranford, thank you for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to interview you. To our listeners at home, I have one final question. For folks that have been watching that would like to get to know you and First Baptist Church, how can they get involved? When are your services, and what are the best ways to contact you and get involved with your church?
Well, we're always available to you. We have most people find the worship service as the front door of the church, and that's their entryway in. We currently have 3 worship services, 8:15, 9:30, 10:45, all on Sunday morning. And I'm in all 3 of those. And listen, I love to meet people, talk to people, and I'm available to you. Just when you call the office, we still have an office. The staff, we still have an office telephone number.
A landline. The church has a landline.
We still have. Well, I think it's a computer phone, but it's still the same number, 386-3075. We've been there over 100+ years. I don't think we've had a phone for over 100+ years, but we're right there at 325 East Pine. Love to see people, talk to people. My door is almost always open.
Well, thank you for your time. You've been very generous with it, and we're grateful for that. So to our viewers, we say goodbye, but we will be back here next week, same time, same place. So thank you for tuning in to Ponchatoula Live.